Oh man, we didn't even hit the start button, and Chris already exited out of the. Uh, Very interesting. All right, here he is. Very good. Good job, Mr. Hill. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. I'm gonna stream this to Twitter too.
Okay,
Just
no problema. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cashflow Chronicles.
I
It
will stream.
is May 29th, 2025. Apple at 199. We got Amazon at 204. Bros at $70. Google at 170. Palantir at 121. Rocket Lab pulling back at $27. SPY just below 5,900. The Qs 518. Bitcoin pulling back to 105.7. Oil still below $61 a barrel, and Henry Hub gas $3.55. Mr. Patel, how are things going for you, sir?
You know, so I'll tell you guys a couple of things like that are affecting me personally, and then we'll go on because I think sometimes just getting to know the person helps. So recently, I have been diagnosed with diabetes. So I'm my A1C is like at 6.6. So it's not like really bad, but it's getting to the point where I need to make some really big lifestyle modifications. And it's kind of sad because Sam asked me for like a professional headshot so that we could use that on a thumbnail, right? For like YouTube and stuff. And so me and the wife right now we're like looking at like because I haven't done a really good like headshot in a while. So we're just like looking at some pictures and I was like, man, pre-COVID, I was like a good-looking dude. I just kind of like let things go a little bit, just let them it's like, I don't need to work out as much. I could just go to the gym and now I'm getting to the point where I'm paying for it. So I guess one of the biggest investments I'm going to make this year is less focus on the market and more focus on the health portion of it. Not to say that like I'm giving up on the market or I'm not like looking at anything. It means that I'm going to take more time out to go work out, and I think getting that into the zone could be better. Like I'm going to be taking a GLP-1 called Manjaro. So I'm like about 60 pounds over my BMI for my height. So I, well, not 60. I say I probably lost like 5 pounds like last week. So it's probably more like 50. But I looked at it and I was like at 50 pounds, like if I lost 50 pounds, I'd be at my ideal BMI weight. And it'd be the weight that I was when I was in the army. And so like when you see the funniest thing is seeing your face transform. So like I guess you guys will be in for it because you'll see my face hopefully shrink, and then in like the next like 6 months to a year, you'll be like, oh look, that's a different looking person. So
Wow.
yeah,
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Yeah, it's a wake up call for me because I'm not in the best of shape by any means, and
yeah.
you're in much better shape than I am. So,
I
yeah.
think what it is after COVID, we all started to kind of do a lot more things online. So it was like, well, it's not my full body, so I don't really need to work on that much. I just need to, keep up for appearances. And then slowly over time, like I think for me also, like I started working from home. So like the main driver for me to get out and work out started to diminish significantly. So a lot of times it was like, oh, you know what, instead of going to the gym and working out or even just the commute, I don't do that anymore. So now I'm in a point where I'm paying for that. But it's fine. There's plenty of people that have worked it all out. So, you know.
It was actually the opposite for me when I moved back from Trinidad in the midst of the pandemic. I moved back to the States in September 2020, and I was actually doing better because I was so at home. I was able to kind of like focus on, not having to rush around and everything like that. And I was doing actually very good um, with respect to like losing weight and going to the gym and everything like that. And it really stopped when I had to go back into the office. And the problem that it was kind of self inflicted at that point because in May of 2021, when we actually could go back to the office, it was because I was kind of going stir crazy. Like I liked and preferred to do work, from an office environment. It helps me split because I do YouTube. I like to play video games. And if I don't separate my environment, then it just means that my day kind of blends together. And it was hard for me to kind of concentrate strictly on, my 9 to 5 work, where, I try to perform well in that role, and then coming home and splitting YouTube, and it would just like kind of blend throughout the day, where I'd just be like only looking at the markets. And so anyway, with that came extra stress that I was putting on myself. And unfortunately that meant I stopped going to the gym and I stopped eating healthy. And so it's interesting. It definitely makes me think, I definitely need to do the same. So
I know it's a weird question,
hopefully.
but do you have any friends that you like hang out with locally? For me, it's been, I wouldn't say a challenge, but like, so I'm originally from New York, and I met my wife before COVID. And the thing is, before COVID, I had a pretty active like social life, like physically, where I would go and do all these things. And then kind of after COVID, I moved down here to Georgia, and I have a few friends here and there, but like no one that like I could just say, hey, bro, let's go to the gym, and all the people that are my age are kind of all have kids, so it's like it's hard for them to kind of get out because I have younger kids, right? So it's not like they can just say, yeah, let's go out for a little bit. So do you have any people like that, like around you, that you just can just be like, hey, let's go grab
It used to
something?
be a lot easier. So like when I started down working here in Houston, I guess it was like 12 years ago now. I started with a group of young people like myself that were 22 to 30 years old, depending on if they had masters, PhDs, or just regular undergraduate degrees. And all those people throughout the layoffs and everything either moved to New York or moved to California or moved to Washington. A lot of them got jobs at Microsoft or Amazon or Apple. And so I was actually another friend of mine who actually was my roommate when I was interning back in 2012 down here in Houston. He actually just left the company as well. And so I was like, man, it's like me and one other person who luckily she's a good friend of mine. And so we keep in touch pretty well, but it's like literally everyone else has left the company or gotten laid off, unfortunately. So the answer to that is there's still a few for people that I hang out with, but a lot of them were coworkers initially because I don't have any family here. But I've made some friends along the way. I just had lunch with a good friend that I've met along the way, who I met through a coworker. I now have Dougie. I meet up with Dougie every once in a while, Michelle, and a few of those folks. So I'm expanding that network, which is great. But to give you an answer, like I don't have somebody that that's a lie. My one good coworker, I chat with him pretty regularly. We try to get lunch at least every other week. But no, I mean, I don't have somebody that's like a diehard, but my buddies Steve are pretty good.
One of the things I'm thinking about just doing more often is what Ahmed is doing, which is kind of cool, which is just traveling more and just meeting up with like friends. Like I'd love to hang out with you on like a weekend, just for shits and giggles, or we could go
to Mexico,
Vegas,
man. Tevis will message me. Tevis will message me, but like, dude, we need to go to Mexico. Do it. Just message me anytime. I need to get out because I'm literally telling people for the past 2 months, it's like I haven't taken much vacation this year. Even when I'm on vacation, sometimes I'm still working. So
I lost vacation hours because I didn't take them because I'm just the type of guy, I don't really work a lot. So I love that. Like me, Adam, what's his name? Amit, Futbucker or Nick, we hung out. It was fun. Like I think I'm going to do that way more now. Just because like, look, we did well in the market. We made good money. I think most of our portfolio picks are in pretty much autopilot mode. And then after that, it's just, the thing is, and that's something that we should probably talk about today, right? Which is buy and hold and just chill. I think so many people, they keep saying, what's the next play? What's the next play? And I'm just like, bro, there is no next play. The next play is go back, invent a time machine, and go buy what you should have bought 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, I would have kicked myself in the ass for selling Palantir. Don't repeat that, but whatever.
Well, fortunately, over 100 people heard it as well. But man, I mean, I've been thinking about it as well. I would love to meet up with some people are really strange though. So I don't know if I want to meet up with everybody that comes to our live streams, but
I agree.
And you probably remember some of those people from Vegas, most specifically June. No, I'm just kidding. June's okay. I'd like to give her crap though.
Nah, June's cool.
Yeah, June's great. But no, I mean, I think it'll be good. I was actually thinking, it's like, I know Amit is going to do Miami. Maybe we should do Miami, and I know He wants to do Vegas this year. Let's do Vegas again.
Yeah, I'm down.
So Mexico, I've been thinking about Mexico. I've been looking at El Salvador, specifically for the friends that like Bitcoin. Like, you want to give that a go, see what an economy looks like on Bitcoin. I'm down for any of it, man.
All right. Well, you know what? Sorry for the first 10 minutes being a personal hour where two friends just get to hash it out. This is how you're supposed to be anyway when you're investing. The first part of it shouldn't be like, oh, what stock did you pick today? It's like, hey, bro, how's your life going? Without that camaraderie, then what's the point? So, I see sometimes on YouTube, people are just like, let's just keep this very professional business. Like, nah, bro. I feel like I've made some meaningful connections with people, and I want to keep that up. So,
I mean, I take a lens from Amit's book. Actually, I think it was pretty funny. He made fun of himself because he did like 45 minutes for the market close, and then he basically just started talking about life and just like what's going on and meetups, and it's about his community at this point, And I think a lot of those people, 3,000, 4,000 people, they chime in. Hopefully, you're resting your goddamn throat, Amit. You were getting a little raspy at the end. But I mean, 3,000, 4,000 people are chiming in. Yeah, they like how he presents the actual content and what's going on with the earnings and everything. But everyone likes chatting with each other. I mean, shit, I was just making fun of people in his mod chat because for some reason they gave me a wrench over there. And, I was just shooting the shit with everybody, and it's just a good group of folks that he's accumulated. And I think we have a good group of folks over here as well.
Yeah. So. Thanks everyone around here. I know some people said like a couple of nice things about us getting there. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do what I can. I'm sure Matt's going to do what he can to lose the weight and get to that healthy state again. Let's see some of the people in the comments section really quickly. Diabetes is probably from working overnights. Definitely, that's something me and the wife spoke about probably working towards a goal of not having to work nights for me anymore. I think that would help tremendously. It's just a overnight eating and going to bed right after eating that definitely is a big detriment. But yeah, everyone here, thank you so much for being here. And I guess we can start talking about some of the positions that we have and see if there's any opportunities that we're seeing. Okay, so today, I think the biggest news for me, believe it or not, was the Next Decade news. Did you see that?
I did not.
So Next Decade signed a 2 MTPA contract for Train 5. Okay. So it just goes. I have to double check really quick, but
I'll pull it up.
The amount of LNG contracts are being signed are accelerating, which is a good sign because that means that FID is more likely for Train 5 and 6 and all the other ones in the future for these guys. So, I mean, if you're patient, this is going to be one of those areas that's going to be like a nice, growth vector. I mean, right now it's still a $2 billion market cap, but the key to Next Decade is as they progress into their future trains, their percentage in those expansion trains are going to be a lot bigger. So that means that the total reward for them is going to be a lot bigger, So what we want to do here, there you go, with Jiro from Japan. So I think this is definitely one of the things that the Trump administration's really pushed for, which is just a lot more people buying U.S. LNG. And JERA is, I think it's Japan Electric, right? So basically it's a utility company. Now, one of the biggest benefits of partnering with a utility company is that, utility companies, they need natural gas on the regular. So they know like, hey, look, we provide this much electricity. We need this much LNG no matter what. And the Japanese are probably one of the best when it comes to being pragmatic about it, because their thinking is, look, if we have like extra LNG, we'll just sell the cargoes to somebody else at a premium, and they have the capital right now. They can borrow money on the cheap. So they're all cool with it. But like I said, I think this is really big news because Train 5 is not even in construction,
Nope. I mean, to give people some context. Yeah. I mean, you're hitting something very large here. Train 4 is pretty much fully fitted, right? In terms of the amount of sale and the sales agreements that it has, the spas. And so they're pretty much just waiting for that to be FID'd. And why is that important? It's important because Next has a 40% initial equity ownership within Train 4. So it's double the amount that they have from Trains 1 through 3. And so obviously that means once it's built and up and running, more cash flow to NextDecade, right? So that's pretty much fully outfitted, right? 90% plus in terms of the actual capacity being hooked up with spas. So now you're moving on before you're even FIDing Train 4, Train 5. And so you're 40% now almost filled with Train 5 at this point. And it's pretty awesome to kind of see this initially. And I think you hit the nail on the head with respect to, I was just, I don't know how much I should say, but I was looking at a lot of different countries' LNG demands and how much they're producing internally from their own assets and fields within their own countries, and where they're going to need either future energy or what have you. And there are so many countries that, unfortunately, unless there's some sort of massive, increase in technology that allows them to really uplift their amount of gas production, there's a lot of places, India specifically, that need LNG going into the 2030 plus timeframe that don't have capacity. And India will, I think, after 2025, 2026, actually go on decline in terms of the natural gas production, unless there's some sort of massive discovery that shows up, which is obviously going to take 5-10 years to be able to build out and start cutting. So you either get that from an LNG facility from the United States or Qatar or somebody else, or in this case, you have Japan who's saying, you know what, like you stated, we're going to try to get a couple, cargoes a month to particularly show up. And yeah, so people were asking specifically, like, what is 1 MTPA? 1 MTPA is 48 BCF, and generally speaking, rule of thumb, you can get about 3.3 to 3.5 BCF of gas on a ship. So that generally means if you have 1 MTPA, it's about a boat to a 1.2 boats a month that's going back and forth. And that works out kind of perfectly for 1 MTPA, because it takes about 25 to 30 days to go from here, or the Gulf Coast rather, to kind of Southeast Asia.
Yeah. You want to see something interesting? Check this out.
Why isn't it?
Let me just share. Yeah. So one of the things that, if you look at the contracts that Cheniere signed, and some of the ones that Venture Global did with Calcasieu Pass. So Cheniere, from what I can tell, their MMB, their liquefaction fee comes out to be about $250 per MMBTU. Calcasieu Pass was like the first project for Venture Global. So the first project, of course, they did a massive discount on to try to get everything up and running and cash flowing. So they were literally charging $2 per MMBTU. So almost a I would say about 25 to 30% discount to what Cheniere was selling. So I think that turned a lot of people off, and that's what a lot of people have built into their projection models. But here's the kicker. A lot of the newer contracts that are being signed are actually much, much higher. So right now, like NextDecade, they're looking at selling at Train 5 around 265 to 275. And I think they got it. I think they got around 270. $2.70 per MMBTU. And I know that doesn't sound like a very much, but if you multiply out how many millions of BTUs that this actually ends up being, it's a pretty big profit increase from what a lot of analysts are projecting. And it's not only NextDecade that's doing that. Venture is doing the same thing as well, where they're renegotiating to actually do liquefaction fees at a much higher price. So right here, Venture Global is offering supply to new buyers at 115 Henry Hub, which is standard, plus $2.85 for 20-year contract. So one of the reasons why I think we haven't seen nearly as many contracts for Venture just come out yet is because they're being a little bit more tight when it comes to, signing the deals at a higher price than what's out there, because there is ton of demand. And I think they can be a little bit more more forceful with what kind of like liquefaction fees they ultimately get. Now that for all shareholders, that's huge. Like if you even a 15 to 20 cent difference in per MMBTU is a huge difference in profit margin, you know? So
I mean,
think
it's a
right now,
20%, 30% increase at that point.
yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we want to see is we want to make sure that, you know, when you sign that 20-year deal, it's not like, hey, you know, you're just signing it to sign it. So I think a lot of people are at a point right now where, you know, they want to see more deals signed, including myself. Like, look, I'm just waiting on the deals to come in, because I think as these deals come on, especially for CP2's excess capacity, it's going to be a big thing. And like I said, this company's got a very bright future going forward. Next decade's in the same boat. So US LNG is going to do good. I also started looking at some Haynesville, pretty much just some projects around there, only because I want to see like, okay, what price at Henry Hub does everything at Haynesville start making sense to start go drilling, right? And I found a couple of services companies that do the drilling work, you know, that they do the field work and everything else. Cause I mean, you know, everyone thinks like the oil companies do their own drilling. Like, no, they usually hire somebody else. So they buy acreage, they hire someone to do the drilling, and then the stuff that comes out is what they end up getting and they end up doing the trading on, right? So I was looking at some field services companies that could theoretically profit, but to be honest with you, man, I'm not a fan of their business model. It's always a boom and bust. I mean, I've been burned in the past by like you remember Rig,
Yep,
like
transition.
Seadrill,
Yep.
Seadrill, and then Transocean, and it was, the thing is with the companies like that, what happens is they're all driven by that commodity cycle. So when the commodity cycle ends, it's like, boom, their money just goes out the door. They have to lay a bunch of people off. Like, look at Schlumberger. Schlumberger should not be where it's trading at right now. But hey, you know, that's where the oil market is. But this is like the perfect time that if you know your industry and your sector, you can make a lot of money. Because what it is if you know that, hey, oil prices are going to rise because of X reason, dude, companies like Schlumberger are going to kill it because all of their services are going to be in high demand. You know, so when it comes to like energy plays, like, and you have to remember, it's kind of like a boom and bust cycle. So when things are going crap, that's the best time to buy energy. And when things are at their peak and it's like, oh, $100 oil, it'll never come down, sell. That's my problem. I didn't sell when it was $100 oil.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've been telling people for quite some time. I mean, times have been very good in 2022, and I sold a lot of my energy stocks in 2023, later half of that, and I kind of only saw things in terms of the amount of growth coming in versus the demand kind of evening out, if not getting worse. And OPEC had a lot of supply, and they were even still choking back, and so I've been kind of thinking that this is going to be a downturn for quite some time. So I personally have been out when it comes to oil stocks specifically. And, other than share-based compensation, which unfortunately I can't sell until I get awarded. But I've been kind of saying that for quite some time. I was thinking that we were going to go below $70 a barrel for quite some time. Now that we're here, I think that the thing that's interesting that you stated specifically around oil stocks is the major companies or the actual E&Ps will probably get hit hardest the first, because they are the ones that are taking the brunt of the high services costs, which we've seen. I'll just be kind of transparent here. We've seen GOA rig rates go from $180,000, $200,000 a day to over now $500,000 a day. So it's a 150% increase just in the day rates. And that's before you even put on any special equipment or anything like that. We're talking about just to get the boat in your name to be able to drill anything. That's not before you actually start drilling anything. So you're spending $500,000 a day just to have the boat floating out there for you to do any work in GOA. And that's up from $200,000 a day, obviously during the downturn of the pandemic. So in 2021-ish timeframe. So what's going to end up happening, and you've already started to see, a lot of the margins are starting to shrink from the actual E&P companies right now. But the benefit is with this is you'll see a slowing of CapEx. People are trying to focus specifically on debt and managing that debt as they go through the cycle. And so what does that mean? That means that they're going to lay down rigs. That means they're going to potentially put service companies that were currently working at all-time high contract prices, and they're going to have to, like you stated, lay people off. That obviously takes time. So what you'll see is the worst of the brunt of, if we stay in the $60 world, the brunt is probably going to happen over the next 6 months or so of earnings looking horrible, people not being able to sustain jobs. I know we're starting to, but UDOC and many others are starting to potentially look at, what alternatives there are. But unfortunately, I'm thinking people are going to lose their jobs. But like you stated, there's a lag because Halliburton, Schlumberger, etc., they'll be kind of in a deflationary period for this particular sector, and prices will hopefully start to come back down again, right? As boats start getting pushed off to the Bahamas just to sit there in the shores and being kind of warm stacked or cold stacked. Eventually you get to a place where even at $60 a barrel, the E&P companies actually start making more money because their break evens and everything, the costs to lift barrels, etc., the deflation sits in, and they're still sitting at $60 a barrel, but their costs are starting to go down again. And so then that is when you start to see the cycle, because their margins start to increase again. They can start investing even at $60 a barrel. And then that's what ends up drawing up again, as always, this increase of inflation within the industry. And so that's where you want to try to time buying service companies. That's where you want to start to time buying, really when that wedge and you start to see the real blood in the streets with the Halliburtons, the Schlumbergers, when people really start getting laid off and their earnings start to look like absolute garbage. That's when you want to buy into the oil companies, because hopefully, of course, this is, we can only use past performance, but it's never indicative of what the future looks like. Hopefully, oil is still around for the next 20, 30 years, and people will still want to demand it. You'll hit that supply demand curve again, and you'll start to get that margins kind of going forward. You're on mute.
Looks like Energy Transfer also signed a deal today because they have their Lake Charles facility. I forgot the name, what they call it, but they signed a 1 MTPA deal too. Same thing with another Japanese utility. Huh.
Japan's a big one. I don't actually know what their demand curve looks like. I've only really looked at India. I've looked at a few other countries.
Well, the challenge with the Japanese is that they get majority of their stuff from Australia. And the thing is, Australia, from what I can tell, is not going to be like the best place to be in the future for myriad of reasons. I think there's like we could go into that another time. There's like some political issues too with getting approvals, and then there's the cost of lift in Australia being higher, and I think there's some domestic challenges that they have with that. But yeah, turns out there's the Japanese are going heavy in buying some long-term contracts.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. With EPD, I get $20,000 each year at 0 tax rate and a $22,000 tax write-off. Yeah. Hey, man, there's, if you know how to work the system, it's great. Because the way that like some of these MLPs are structured is that if you buy it and the distribution that you get, it goes into something called capital reduction. So basically it's like it's called capital return. So you don't pay taxes until you sell. But if you never sell, you don't ever pay taxes. Like Steven is good about that. Like he knows way more about how to do that. Like, so he spoke to me about it for Energy Transfer, about how you get like basically the what is it called? The distributions you get, they're in the form of capital return and not like dividends. So what it comes down to is like, well, let's say you bought the share at $50 and you get a $2 distribution. That means that your cost basis is no longer $50, it's $48. And then the year after that, if you get another $2, it ends up going to like 46. And so when you sell, it's almost like your cost basis. If you sold at 50, which is what you bought it at, quote unquote, and you sell it at 50, it doesn't count as 50. It costs as your cost basis being 40, 46, so that's what it is.
Interesting. Were you surprised by Nvidia yesterday? I didn't really get to listen too much
No,
into it,
I
but
wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised. The demand for their chips is off the chain, man. It's the only thing is the market's reaction to it post earnings was a little bit muted, which I was a little shocked to see. Because I mean, I thought it would have, thought it would have held, but I think there's just so much uncertainty right now with the whole Trump tariff thing, where the judge basically said that the tariffs were illegal, and then another judge said in appeals like, no, it's fine, like you should litigate this, and so this back and forth is definitely not helping, and the
mm,
market hates uncertainty because they can't plan around it. But I will say this. I think the economy is slowing, and it's slowing a lot more than people think. I think the impacts of the higher interest rates on the economy are starting to really like hit. The data that I'm seeing primarily from the housing sector is what is somewhat troubling to me. And I think we spoke about it last time. So when it comes to higher interest rates, the longer these interest rates stay where they are, the more chance it is that we do end up in a recession. Now, recessions ultimately will accomplish the goal of getting inflation down, but it's not the way you want it to go down, because what you're going to see is a lot of layoffs. Like you're seeing that happen in oil and natural gas, right? So you're seeing energy prices lower, which is great. Love to see that. But at the same time, if the companies in the oil patch can't make any money, they lay people off. That's not good. That means that now, there's unemployment goes higher, and all sorts of other secondary effects that we have to take into consideration. So
mm,
yeah,
there you go.
Chris does not have kids. I don't have
Chris,
kids,
not have
Heinzie.
kids, not yet.
Yeah,
Interesting. All right. Well, one thing that was surprising to me, we obviously saw VG explode past $12.50 at one point, and it looked like it was headed towards 13. At this point, obviously, it's about 45% of our portfolio. It was approaching over 50% of the portfolio at that point. I think at one point we hit over $8,800,
yeah,
which is great because literally when it comes to 2 or 3 days from now, we'll probably be adding another couple $100 just based off of revenue from the podcast. So it's nice to be able to kind of see what potentially we can do associated with that. Um, any thoughts on where we're at with the portfolio? Any things that you'd want to potentially trim or move around? I know one of the things that we've thought about adding as well is ASTS. I know that it's a big one for you, Sam, and Couch Investor, and probably everybody on X right now that wants to add in, and understandably so. I think it's going to be potentially a big year. Potentially, I'll say. I'm still not
hmm
convinced, but fingers crossed for those guys that are invested and kind of have their money where their mouth is.
yeah.
Anything other than that, with the ASTS kind of being the big one that we don't have in the portfolio that we want to.
I mean, this is something that I was originally hesitating to basically do publicly, only because it's a little bit more sophisticated. But um, and the thing is, I think we spoke about it offline, maybe doing some spreads on TLT. Only because I think as a hedge, it could work well, especially if we go really far out, long dated. Like today, if you look, TLT was actually up for the last 5 days, you know. So one of the things that you're going to see is if we do get a recession, the Fed, of course, is going to end up having a cut. And if they have to cut, like let's say 200 basis points, the long end of the curve is going to come down at least 100. So if you know how TLT works, it's based on duration. So if you have, like, let's say duration, and TLT has a duration about 15 years and like 15.7. So basically, if let's say rates move down 100 basis points, it'll go up 15% from what it is. So if it's trading right now at 86, it's like roughly like 98, 99. So you could theoretically create a opportunity there if you think rates are going lower, and right now there's pricing that could actually be attractive. So I hesitate to add it to this account. I'm personally doing it in my portfolio, which is good because it's giving me a little bit of like volatility cushion where, when the markets really take a deep dump and TLT starts to climb again, it does well. I mean, I'm not I'm not immune to moves down, but you know, it's like I said, it's a good hedge against something breaking in the market. If we get like a June, like what is it, a May 4th kind of event? Was it May 4th or was it April 4th? You know, with the Liberation Day, something like that.
Yeah, was it April 2nd? Is that what it
I
was?
think April 4th. I think it was April 4th.
I
Yeah.
thought he did it
I
the
think
day
that,
after April Fools, so that way people didn't think it was a
yeah.
joke.
Yeah. So that was the one that that basically
Okay, people are agreeing with you,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
they're
So
or they're
basically,
trolling me.
no, it's April 4th. So if that's the case, then you can end up doing TLT has a duration of 10 years maximum since it's all 30-year bonds with at least I'd go to the prospectus and check it out.
It's a
Just
20-year treasury, so how could it be 30-year bonds?
yeah.
Right? Isn't it 20-year TLT?
No, it's like a hodgepodge of things. So let me just bring it up real quick. So this is all right. Share my screen.
I
TLT.
mean, it literally says. Oh, I guess it says 20 plus year. So you're right.
Yeah. So if you look here, right?
Why isn't it?
Right there. So effective duration is 15 years, 15.550 years. Okay. So it's not the weighted average maturity, it's the duration. That's the thing you have to keep in mind. Because it's all based on the duration. That's what you're going to see the price move at.
And so the thought process is if you're obviously getting bonds yielding, they're issuing bonds yielding at say 4% versus the 5%, then people are going to want to obviously buy those 4% yielding bonds. So what ends up happening is in this particular case, the value of the bonds within the TLT portfolio actually rise in value to kind of equate to that 4% bond because they can't go out and buy that, sorry, they don't want the 4%, they want the 5% bond, but unfortunately they can't get it, right? So the value of that 5% bond actually raises to be able to match that 4% because that's what's currently on the market. And so obviously that's where the TLT principal appreciation shows up, is because all those bonds that are currently weighted, 15 years remaining are trading at X, right? And I think that's why you saw it really take a huge dump since 2022 because we basically had zero interest rate policy, and that went basically to basically zero as much as we could. And with that, obviously, it pushed the price to TLT of over $150 at one point, and really started to take that dive you always see this happen, right? Whenever there's some sort of narrative change around, we're going to start cutting now, we're going to wait a 6 months, that's when you start to see the fluctuations and the actual price itself. I think you alluded to something very good, Chris. It was like TLT is currently the lowest it's been since since inflation was its highest back in 2023 or something like that, because at that point that was the highest we had risen interest rates before starting to cut. Something like that.
So the thing is, the dynamics of TLT are very interesting. It all depends on the yields that you're looking at and the underlying. So, like I said, my prediction is we'll get a lot more rate cuts, long into the curve, flattens a little bit. There's multiple ways that the Fed is going to, not the Fed, the Treasury is likely to do it. And these are things that we discussed Sunday night in our private investor call. So, was it Sunday night or Monday night? Whatever, doesn't matter. Someone's like, why are you choosing AST over Rocket Lab? I actually like the business model that AST is going to have, which is something that I understand more than I do about just generally Rocket Lab. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not against Rocket Lab. I just feel that AST has a much bigger opportunity with a lot less risk, because all they really have to do is put satellites in the air. They've already got all the technology, they've got the partnerships, and basically they'll be a free cash flow machine, down the line. So I don't mind right now paying to buy some of it. They also have a lot of partnerships with Google, American Tower, Verizon. Like, these are strategic investors in there. So when you see like these big names line up behind a company that's still only a $7 billion market cap company with a TAM that's in the hundreds of billions, not hundreds of billions, but like tens of billions. It's a pretty good value proposition in the future if they even meet some of their expectations. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we'll see.
That'll be
How is
interesting.
Meet
I'm curious to
how is
see.
Meet Kevin playing TLT? I don't know how Meet Kevin is playing TLT. I do know that he said that he was gonna dress up like a clown if TLT isn't $100 by October. Did you see that?
I do not know.
Yeah, let me just pull it up.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably by October, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's pushing a lot of cuts in the short term.
Well, my guess is that he is anticipating some sort of like a black swan event to hit us that a lot of people may or may not be
You might be right.
considering. So maybe that's it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. But I have started to see houses sit longer on the market here in Houston, which I don't know if this is because people aren't moving right now because the interest rates are still high. I started seeing mobility around the turn of the year because it seemed like, and like you stated, it's like we're not like in the early spring anymore. Like we're getting into the midst of summer, and this is when people really need to have their houses up and kind of on the market. So the fact that you see a lot of these houses kind of just sitting is pretty interesting.
Like this right now, if you look at the amount of homes that are listed in Texas in April of 26, it's 123,000, which is more than what it was pre-pandemic. So there was a huge building boom in Texas, and I think one of the markets that's correcting heavily right now is Austin. So you're starting to see this huge rise in inventory, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. Usually the amount of inventory peaks out around July, August, right? And then it kind of starts to make its way down as people, take things off the listing sites, and then it kind of like winds down, and then it'll, and then the season will come up again and everything else. But you can see there's a huge pop in inventory, and no one's. And the thing is, it's in multiple states this time. It's not necessarily just Texas. So if you look at Florida is another big market that's correcting right now. Look at the active inventory. It's almost 182,000 homes, whereas the average it was listed would be like 120, 130 at the peak. In 2019, it was like 155. And look at this. It's just one way up. I'm seeing
what
the
about
same
the
thing
northeastern
happening.
part of the U.S.?
So that's one of the more interesting things. Northeast is actually not bad because they haven't had a lot of what is that thing called? Like look, if you look at New Jersey, New Jersey didn't do a lot of building.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the listing counts in New Jersey. Let me see. Active listings. Sorry, that was just new. Active listings, New Jersey, right here. Look at that. It's still really low. Like back in 2016, it was like 54K. Now it's only like 14,000 in all of New Jersey. So prices in the Northeast are actually holding up relatively well, but that's not because like people are dying to live in the Northeast. It's probably because there's just no building up there.
I think it's it's partly regulation. Like I know
a lot of regulation.
my grandfather, was kind of an apartment owner, and he pretty much like would own, small sized apartment buildings. And he eventually started getting into building because in the early 2000s, like everybody else, building was cheap and easy to do. And that's what obviously caused the housing bubble. Right. But, regulation is kind of set in the Northeast where it's like, it's easier to almost tear a house down to the studs and rebuild than it is to build a new home. And so there's like things that if you build a home, like if you buy a lot of land and put in a home, there's like certain things that you have to do that are regulatory that are 50 some $1,000s before you even start on the foundation. Like we're talking about like pretty much like making sure that rainwater can move away from the home in a certain manner so it's not disrupting like the local environment, and those things that you have to build are like 30 grand on their own. And it's stupid small things like that are very prohibitive. It's like, well, that doesn't actually add any square footage to the home. That doesn't actually allow you to actually like increase the value. So that's $30,000 that you're gonna have to spend. So anyway, I just think that it's partly the fact that
Yeah.
there's obviously demand in those states, but also they're not building. And I think part of it's because it just doesn't make sense to build. And then part of it as well is because most of the time people are, at least during the pandemic, people were moving out of those states. So people were moving to Florida, Texas. So how much were builders actually wanting to
Mhm.
invest money into New Jersey? But funny enough, I mean, New Jersey is where I have some of my homes, and those those areas, there are a few new builds actually showing up, which I'm actually kind of surprised that you're showing that there's not a lot of new builds, but in my vicinity there's a few, not a
I have to
massive amount.
I have to double check. They could have a lot more multifamily construction over there because, the thing is,
Yeah.
like, land is one of those things that's a lot more limited. So it makes more sense to build like giant multifamily, rather than building single family homes in those areas. So maybe that's one of the things. But, some people are like, who wants to live in New Jersey? Well, New Jersey's proximity to New York City, which is the giant financial hub of the Northeast, is right there. And then you've got DC right below it. I mean, look, that DC to Boston corridor is one of the most populated places in the country. And there's
Mm,
a lot of demand for that area. You want to stay close to the Boston has all the research and universities. New York has all the finances, fashion, advertising, all that stuff. And DC is the center of power for politics. So literally all along that corridor is where so much of the economic activity in the country happens.
mhm,
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great companies in Jersey too, believe it or not. But here's what it looks like. You're seeing that depending on like this is from Redfin, but these are the markets that have a lot more buyers. I mean, a lot more sellers than buyers. So you're seeing like Miami, Florida, West Palm Beach. And look, this does not mean that like, you're gonna see a 20-30% drop in prices. Like, I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's literally like you'll see a more sustained price in the home rather than like it appreciating double digits like the last 4 years. Like last 4 years, home prices literally every year you'd see it up like double digits, like 10% to
and you're like,
15%
why?
depending where you are. Huh?
And you were like, why? I mean, it did, like, it
Yeah.
just didn't make
It
sense.
was It's just, it ended up being inventory, but right now inventory is climbing. People are starting to, sell their homes, even if they do have a 3% mortgage. I think people forget that, life doesn't let you hold on to being in one place forever. Your wife leaves you. You got to leave the house. Your wife dies. You got to leave the house because you may not be able to afford it by yourself, or your husband dies. Now you got to. So medical issues, uh, issues with the marriage can do that. Let's say a job, like let's say you get a job in the middle of somewhere else that's like too good to pass up. Even if you have a 3% mortgage, you're willing to give it up to do that. Then there's of course people that are older, they're going to downsize when their kids go to college, or
Mhm.
they're going to need to upsize when they have more kids. So, it's nice to say that like I want to buy a house and live there for 30 years, but I think it's exceptionally rare to have that unless you've got a lot of points that are very, very stable.
Mm,
I think there's so many things. So right now, I think the average amount that people stay in their homes is between 7 to 10 years. So if you think about it, 2020 and 2021 is when a lot of people bought homes, during COVID when interest rates were at that peak. So, 26, 27, a lot of those people are going to start to look. And so in my expectation, I think housing prices are not necessarily going to see a huge amount of appreciation for the next like 5 years. I'm not saying they're not going to appreciate. I'm just saying they're not
mhm.
going to see that huge level of appreciation, which in
Nationwide,
turn,
obviously, there's going to be pockets that do well. There's going to be pockets that
yeah,
do
yeah,
worse. So you're
always.
saying kind of a conglomerate nationwide, or are you saying that you have a strong suspicion that, let's just say, 80 to 90% of American homes will actually stay flatlined? Like, I guess I'm kind of trying to understand the severity, you think.
I My thinking is it's going to stay roughly between 1 to 2% in price appreciation. And we've had periods in the country where real estate has appreciated very slowly compared to CPI. Okay,
Mhm.
so if you look at like in the past, like, and we could look it up, like shelter inflation over time. Let's look it up.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, just the houses that I bought, and it's not like I've been holding them for a long time. Some of them have appreciated, 20%. And you think when you're only putting down 20%, and then the value of the home appreciates 20%, you think about it. If you're putting down 20%, you're buying on 5-to-1 leverage, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. And
yeah.
so if the house value goes up 20%, you're actually up 100% on your money. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account, real estate fees if you were to sell it and everything of the like. But I'm sitting on a shit ton of equity in some of these homes at this point, where it's
Yeah.
not nearly the size of my stock portfolio, but it's catching up, and it's actually catching up pretty quick. And surprisingly enough, before I kind of hand it back to you, my goal is always kind of trying to figure out the appropriate loan to value ratio of the properties, because you want to make sure that you have enough equity in those properties that the bank can't call you up and be like, hey, Matt, we're going through a housing crisis. We're going to need that mortgage right now, right? Because technically the banks can call the mortgage whenever they want, right? I
I don't
don't
think
think
they
that
can. I don't think
I'm
they
pretty
can.
certain that they actually can like force you to sell if they really
No,
want to. I'm
no,
I'm
it's a
fairly
fixed
certain.
contract, right?
I don't think so.
Unless you're delinquent on something, I don't think they could just arbitrarily say, "Hey, I want my money back."
I'll look it up. Yeah, it's a good pushback. I'm
I've
fairly.
never.
I've heard in the past
Yeah,
that people have gotten screwed because the bank has said we're not keeping this loan. You need to close it, otherwise we're, going to foreclose on the property.
yeah,
But that was during the Great Recession. So
yeah,
I'll look it up. But anyway, my thought process is what playing that game of teetering on how levered do you want to be and making sure that you're not over levered or you're not sitting on too much equity, right? Because the hope for
yeah,
me is I want to play the 8-figure game, and depending on how well I play the 8-figure game, maybe I'll try to make a hit at the 9-figure game. But
yeah.
I mean, my goal right now is to try to get to that 8-figure mark. So
So if you look at shelter inflation, right? Shelter inflation roughly is about right here about 4. Sometimes like it'll have a period of like the 2s and the 3s, like after the 1990s, after post inflation, you saw home prices, their appreciation was about 2 to like 2 to 3%. And then there were of course times where the bubble popped in the tech bubble and it went down. But relatively speaking, you know, it shelter does appreciate over time, right? But when you think about it, nominal inflation versus real growth, that's the part that you have to keep in mind. So what do I mean by that? So if let's say your home is appreciating by 3% per year, but inflation is running 2.5, the real growth in your home is only zero point 0.5, right? So it's not a lot of appreciation. Um, so that's where we kind of get a little bit like tangled when it comes to homes. Now, the good thing is you can leverage the shit out of a home. So you can put down 5% and get literally 20-to-1 leverage,
yeah,
which means every time the home goes up by a small amount, you're making a crap ton. So here's an example. And I'm just going to keep the numbers very simple. Let's say you buy a house for $100,000. Okay. And you put down 5%. So you put down $5,000 as your baseline. Let's say the home goes up by 2.5%, right? Which on $100,000 is 102,500.
yeah,
Now you're thinking, it only went up by 2.5%. That's not really a great return. But remember, you only borrowed at what is that thing called? You borrowed 20-to-1 because you
yeah,
bought you borrowed that all that additional money. So what ends up happening now is that your actual return on that $5,000 down payment is actually $2,500. So
yeah,
now you end
50%.
up making 50% return. Now, of course, remember you have to remember interest charges, right? So the bank is not giving you free money. Now, the key is the lower interest that you get, the better it is in terms of home price appreciation. So it's almost like if you borrow that, $95,000 and you pay 7% for it, right? Now it doesn't really make sense because if you paid 7% on that 95,000, let's say you paid 6,500 and you're like, "Oh, look, I got a capital appreciation for, $2,500. I'm making all this money." Like, no, you're not, because you still have to pay 5,000 in. So if you don't have an asset that's cash flowing, that's a problem. But if
Yeah,
you have an asset that's paying for itself, that's where you make real money. Because if you, let's say, rented it out, that same property and you were able to get, let's say, pay the entire mortgage, including property taxes, and then you made like another 5% on it, bro, you're chilling, So that's the key to homes over time. So that's why housing is considered natural leverage. Yeah, because you can leverage the crap out of it. The only thing is with housing is that you have to be very careful where you are when it comes to housing, because there are times where, if let's say the quality of the location goes shitty, like if you really elect a lot of shitty politicians and you get a series of terrible mayors and stuff like that, then look, nothing is going to save real estate. Like look at Detroit, look at Cleveland, so a lot of bad
location is important.
So that's why it's real estate and politics they pretty much go hand in hand, because of that reason. But okay. So the point that I was trying to make is that you can see here, since the great financial crisis, interest rates were literally at ZERP. So you could borrow mortgages at 3-4% right around along this time, all the way up until January 2020. Here you could actually borrow sub 3, which was kind of crazy. Now look what happened after that. Prices just skyrocketed on housing. So at one point, shelter inflation was running about 8% per year. That has come down significantly, and it looks like it's actually going to break below this. Because I mean, that's what usually happens with these markets. You have these moments of, crazy growth, and then of course you're going to see like a sharp decline as things normalize. And so I think this normalization is the key thing that I think Meet Kevin is using, and I'm using right now to bet on TLT. So my bet is inflation is going to come down a lot faster than people think. The economy is starting to kind of wobble a little bit. You've got an administration that's really pulling a ton of liquidity out of the system. Right now you're seeing student loan borrowers kind of struggling a little bit because now they actually have to pay into their student loans again. Credit card default rates are going up. Auto loans are up. Jobs right now, the unemployment picture. If you look at the JOLTS data, look at JOLTS. Let me just pull it up real quick.
A lot of that's coupled with as well, like you're kind of stating. I mean, you're seeing a lot of different things come down in price. Gas prices are coming down. Oil prices are coming down. Not so much about all of electricity, but you're just seeing a lot of other things go in the wrong direction. It's not to say that inflation itself is going to go negative per se, but it's going to drag down on the overall number. So the hope is at least you kind of stay in the low 2s, hopefully.
Yeah, if you look at this, which is the job openings data. Okay, see this? These are the total number of jobs.
You gotta zoom in on that, Playboy.
Yeah, sorry about that. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. So you can see here, this is the number of job openings. There were literally about 7 in 2019. There were about 7 million job openings, 7.5 million. During all the stimulus post-COVID, job openings got to almost 12 million. Ever since then, things have just been going down, down, and down. And all the JOLTS, like literally the job openings numbers are looking like they're coming in lower and lower. So, and then you look at longer term inflation, long-term unemployment. Long-term unemployment. So these are people that are, unemployed for like 27 weeks or more. You can see this gradual rise, and it just keeps getting higher and higher. So, like I said, there's a lot of people that are looking for work that are not finding as much work right now, and so they're not demanding much higher wages like they were in 2021 and 2022. And I think this is going to be one of those things that's going to lead us to, wage destruction. So you're not going to see as much real wage growth. And so consumer spending is going to come down. So 2026, we're likely to see probably some market weakness. And if we do see that, then of course it just puts the onus on the Fed to cut. And if the Fed cuts, then of course TLT goes up. I mean,
wages might shrink, like you stated. I mean, if you see a lot of unemployment and you're seeing a lot of the inflation total come down, it took about a year for us at UDOC to kind of see that inflation kind of flow through in terms of like price increases, in terms of wage. And so, I mean, I'm sure with potential layoffs, offshoring, all these sorts of things happening all at once, then I wouldn't be surprised if you see an actual wage shrink overall, and
Yeah.
that's obviously going to play a big impact into inflation within the United States as well.
Yeah. I think as the labor market tightens, it's a natural process,
It is.
so we'll see what it is, man. Plus
I
you have
want to I want to
yeah.
follow up. So yes, banks can call a mortgage early. So let me read something from Grok. It's way smarter than I
Mhm.
am, so it is my preferred. Under circumstances, obviously, it's rare,
Mhm.
typically tied to special clauses, mortgage agreements, violations of its terms. But here's concise explanations, keeping in mind, a lot of different other things. Mostly it's tied to commercial loans, so that's a piece of it.
Mhm.
But a bank can demand full repayment of a mortgage before its term ends if the loan includes a callable mortgage clause or acceleration clause, or if the borrower breaches a contract. Common scenarios include the callable mortgage clause. I don't need to necessarily go through that. Acceleration clause. Other rare cases, and I think this is where the great financial crisis came into account. And if you think about Silicon Valley Bank, this is something that could have been happening as well. Financial distress of the lender. If a bank faces insolvency, it might sell or call loans, though this is highly regulated and very rare. And there's also specialized loans as well, non-qualified mortgages, private loans, commercial mortgages, stuff like that. What else? Is there anything in here? Yeah, for standard residential, banks rarely call loans early unless the borrower defaults or violates its terms, like title transfers that were unwarranted, etc. Like people doing like a lot of sell to mortgages these
Mhm.
days, where it's just like you could pay me like for this house that I'm living in, I have equity of X. So because I have, well, in this case, I don't have a favorable mortgage rate. But if I did, say, have a 3.5%, you could be like, Matt,
Subject
subject to,
to.
thank you, subject to. You could be like, Matt, I'll pay you your $60,000 worth of equity, so for you to walk away, which is how much I would get. And as long as you write pretty much the loan over to me, and I'll make the payments, right? And so that allows you to maintain a much cheaper mortgage rate. Meanwhile, I still get to get out of the property at whatever equity I had in it, minus the real estate fees, of course. And so some banks like that, some banks don't. Some banks see it as a risk. Anyway, just some food for thought. But I did want to make sure that I wasn't saying lies to the people. So, like you
Yeah.
stated, it is rare, but it's um, not true. There are
The
opportunities to do it.
one thing that someone mentioned in the comment section, I was worried when I lost my husband and I wasn't on the mortgage. Okay, one of the good things about, like, let's say you have an older parent who bought a home in 2020 and they have a 3% mortgage and they pass away and they leave you the house. Believe it or not, the mortgage transfers to you. It doesn't like just the
Directly
bank
to the
doesn't just
spouse.
say, give me all my money. Yeah, because what
Yeah.
happens is as long as it's like a death of the original holder, it goes to the next person that's responsible for it. Now, of course, you're supposed to pay that mortgage. Don't get me
Yes.
wrong. It's not like, oh my God, here's a free house just because someone passed away. But it does limit the amount of shock. Like, let's say, someone has to basically come up with all this money or they have to refinance at a much higher interest rate. So,
Mhm.
like, let's say, if you are lucky enough to have a low interest mortgage, you can keep it, like the
Yeah.
bank, as long as the bank knows, like, hey, you're the designee, they transfer the stuff to you. So it's not,
And another
yeah.
nice thing, although unfortunately in a bad occurrence, is if a spouse unfortunately passes away and it gets transferred to you, the step up in cost basis is completely 100%. And you do not, like, let's say, for example, you guys bought the house together at $100,000 and it is now appreciated to $500,000. Upon passing of, that initial spouse, that house gets transferred 100% to you at the new cost basis of $500,000. And so you would be able to sell that home and not pay any capital gains, which, of course, in the United States, if it's a personal residence, you can claim up to $500,000 if you lived in the property for the last 2 out of 5 years. So that's generally not a case. But in Chris's case, where a very wealthy man probably has multiple $1 million properties,
No,
then
no,
no, I'm just
no,
kidding.
don't do
But
that. I do not.
No, but the thought process is that happens for a lot of property, right? So that's why it's important sometimes with key financial items, if you are getting it from a husband to a wife, or a wife to a husband on the unfortunate passing, to get these things appraised. And it might cost you $500 or $2,000, but in the case of, let's just say, $1 million worth of real estate, that can be a large amount of potential opportunities in terms of tax savings, based off of the fact that you get that step up in cost basis. Unfortunately, if you're going from a parent to a child, you're able to, if I were to say, take a home, and for example, my mother's house, let's just say it's $500,000, and unfortunately she passes away, and we get it reappraised at 600,000, we'd only be able to get half of that step up in cost basis. So the cost basis wouldn't go to 600,000, but it would go in between the 500 and 600, and it'd be worth 550,000, which is nice. It allows us to eliminate some of the tax burden associated with it. But
you want to see a really cool house? I was looking at it. I'm definitely not gonna buy it, but dude, this is like stretch goals in life. This is in Cartersville, Georgia, so it's a little bit northern Georgia. You see this house right here? It is perched on a hill, or a mountain technically, but it is an awesome home. That is the view that you would be getting. Look at that.
I'd be smoking one of these on that. The nice little Cubana.
Look at that, bro. Just some of these homes that we have here in Georgia, especially in the mountains, they are amazing. I mean, the insides are great too, but yeah.
My aunt moved to the North Carolina. Unfortunately, the North Carolina mountains that got hit, last year during the bad storm that came through. Fortunately, her road got up the mountain. The road got washed out, but her house was fine. Mm-hmm. So luckily, everyone was fine in her particular area, but her road was washed out, and a lot of, unfortunately, people below the mountain on her and did not do so fairly. So but her house, she showed me the view, and it's like that, and I'm just like, that's where Maddie needs to be. Like, yes, I love my beach properties, and I definitely want to get one or two more of those so I can have my own standalone beach property. And yes, I'll rent it out, but it's like right now, as you probably know, I'm feverishly it needs to be rented out as much as possible. But if I get a couple more of those, it's like, okay, yes, I'll have my other beach property that I'll rent out. But if I'm going to go down for 2 weeks, I'm going down for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? I don't need to worry about rent and, making sure that it's rented out full time. It's sure, rent it in the off season, but during the summer, I want to be there. I also would like to have something like that in kind of the lower Appalachians, Georgia, Tennessee,
Pigeon Forge, dude.
Something like that.
Yeah,
those places are dope. And I've also thought, at what point do I start looking at Wyoming or the Rockies as well? Because some of those areas, but I don't know if I need that Dougie Dollars money for the Rockies. So
Chris is looking at houses instead of Google, bro. What do I do? Do I just keep investing all the time? No, sometimes you got to live a little, right? And me and the wife are looking for a house, so we're not going to buy something like that. It's just, we could buy that, but as I was explaining to my wife this morning, I said, honey, we could buy something super freaking nice. That's amazing. That would be crazy, but it would be we are trading in peace of mind for that mortgage payment. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'd rather just be chilling with what I have right now, and we'll find something good. The other thing is, it's just the two of us. When it's two people, how many rooms do you actually occupy in your house?
I'm afraid to open the guest room behind me. Because my mom stayed there last July, but I don't think I've been in there since I cleaned the sheets. So it's almost been a year since I've been in that room. I'm afraid, and because it's me, right? It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 2.5.
Yeah,
it's not important, but I'm afraid that there's a massive spider infestation or something in there, because I literally haven't looked inside, and I'm afraid. I'm at this point, it's been so long. I'm gonna open it. It's just covered in spider webs or something like that. My worst nightmare. But
Jeez.
I'm sure it's fine because otherwise, I mean, if it really was, there'd be spiders all over this house. There's not. So
We have a 3-bed, 2-bath condo, right? And our middle room, like, okay, here's a secret to happiness when it comes to a wife. Make sure you have multiple rooms. So she sleeps in the bedroom down the hall. I sleep in the bedroom like here, and we sleep separately. It's, trust me, it works. But we have this middle room, which is turned into our storage closet, basically. It's like anytime we have anything like junky, we could theoretically be better at organizing. We're like, just stick it in the middle room. So if you go to our middle room, it's just packed with all this crappy. I mean, it's not crappy. It's actually useful stuff, but it's stuff that you don't need all the time, like year round. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I love my condo for that reason, that it's the perfect amount of space for me and her. We are right now. It does suck that we can't necessarily have like a lot of guests at the same time, but maybe that's a blessing in disguise too. Like, if you really want a bunch of squatters just showing up, you're like, hey, you remember me? I'm your lost uncle. I'm gonna stay at your place for the next 2 weeks. Like, nah, bro, I'm good.
yeah, I
Chris
do.
just roommates with the wife. I do
Yeah,
roommate with my wife. I love my
they're just
roommate.
roommates. No, the one
Yeah.
thing that I definitely want. So I'm on the second floor of my house, obviously, and I don't have any
Mhm.
bedrooms on the first floor. And so as my mom ages, hopefully she lives a much longer life.
Yeah.
But she was here last July, like I said, and I mean, she was able to get up and down the stairs perfectly fine. But as she gets a little older, like it'd be nice to have a bedroom on the first floor. So there's a lot of ranchers in Houston like that are really only strictly one floor. So I would love to get a place where I have, pretty much a bedroom on the first floor. A kitchen on the first floor is a big deal for me as well. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to carry groceries up and down stairs. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of townhouses that have obviously the garage first floor, a bedroom, spare
Mhm.
bedroom, a bathroom down there, and then they have stairs up to the second floor where you have the kitchen and the living room area, etc. Then the third floor even has more bedrooms and stuff like that. It's like, I just think that that's too much. Like, I just want a little bit of land. I'm not asking for much, for this particular house, my everyday house, until I retire from the normal 9 to 5, which I'll never retire, but you know what I mean. I leave the
Yeah.
workforce, and I just want like a nice quarter acre. Like, that's perfectly
Yeah.
enough. Have a nice, maybe have a second floor, but I would love to have a kitchen, a bedroom, etc. on the first, and then yes, if I need the master on the second, that's perfectly fine with me. But yeah, this is a great house. It's going to be a great
Yeah.
rental. But yeah, I mean, eventually I'll need to move.
When I'm finally done buying a house, you, Steve, Ahmed, all you guys are more than welcome to come and squat at my place.
Yeah,
As much as
I
you
might not
want.
leave, especially if I get laid off. Um,
By all means, come on
I've
back.
actually made a bet with my one buddy. Actually, he was just like, Matt. He was like, I was like, dude, I was like, what do you need me? He has a nice basement. He just bought a nice house. I was like, dude, how much for me to stay in the basement for a while? And he was like, dude, he's like, you could stay for 2 years. He's like, if you finish the bathroom down there, he's like, it'll cost
Yeah.
about 18 grand. I'm like, not a bad move. I could pretty much move there for like what, less than $1,000 a month if I wanted to stay there for 2 years. But let's be honest, if I got laid off, I'd be okay. I don't think I would
Yeah.
have to move in with anybody unless I wanted to, which with him, I don't know. It's kind of tough. He has kids. Like, do I want to be that weird dude that lives in the basement? I mean, it might be something I do for a month or two while I, if I move back to Pennsylvania, which if I did get laid off, I probably would,
Yeah.
at least temporarily, or at least spend some time up there. Like was it during the pandemic? No, during the pandemic. No, it was
What?
during Hurricane Harvey when we weren't able to work from the office because Hurricane
Mhm.
Harvey flooded our office. I worked from Pennsylvania for a little bit because we just weren't able to go into the office. So it's just like, oh, let's go work from my parents' house.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about personal stuff.
Yeah. I think this pod tonight was like just a bunch of personal stuff because the market, I mean, bro, we talk about the market all the time. All right. And sometimes it's like we're beating a dead horse and saying, like, you should look at Rocket Lab, which I
Mm,
should look more at Rocket Lab. You were
mm.
correct. But yeah, man, sometimes just need to just let it out. So anyone here,
Yeah.
you're like a little disappointed that we didn't give you like the new greatest ticker symbol this week. Sorry, it's unfortunately not every episode is gonna have Cashflow Chronicles. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's gonna be Chris and Matt Chronicles.
Yeah. No, it's 100%. I mean, I'm going through an identity crisis right now myself because it's like I'm I'm a beneficiary of my own financial success and all the work that I've done in the past that has led me to this point. And I'm,
Yeah,
as you know, where I'm at, my goal is 8 figures, and I'm like trying to find that next leg up and stuff where I'm like, okay, what path do I go down next? Like, do I just
yeah,
keep doing what is tried and true and just throwing money at the markets and just keep going after it? Or do I actually need to like pivot and actually come up with my own, business, like, that I need to scale, right? Because as we know, and I've debated whether or not I manage people's money. Do I get my Series 65? Do I start up Matty Capital in reality? Do I try to launch an ETF? Like, I've had these debates, and like as you and I have chatted as well, for me, not speaking on your behalf, but on my behalf, it's like I don't necessarily know if I want that um pressure of managing people's money, nor do I
yeah.
want them to ask me questions, 24/7. So it's like, I'd have to kind of gain a lot more patience if that was going to be something that I did. But I'm just trying to figure out, like, do I just keep going down the path? Because it's like I'll have a windfall for my share-based compensation coming through later this year, plus a little bit of extra cash coming in. And it's like, do I just keep throwing it at the market,
Dude, blow it on shit that's fun. Like I told you I was looking at some pictures with my wife. Bro, we had a great time. We went to Iceland. We've been
Mm,
to like just go see the world, man.
yeah.
There's so much out there to see. Like, what's the point of making money if you're not enjoying it? I was like, it's nice to look at the Robin Hood and be like, oh, look, I made money today. But I'd rather be like, shit, let me look at my pictures from 2019 with me and the wife. We went to Iceland. We went to a black
Mm,
sand beach. And I told her, like, the happiest moments I have with my wife have pretty much been just me and her driving from Vegas to Utah and Arizona and
mm,
that Southwest trip. Like we do that every year on October, November. We
mm,
just like I think this year we're gonna go see I think this year we're gonna go to New Mexico. So what we tend to do is we usually fly into Vegas, stay in Vegas for like a day or two, and then rent a car and go like to the southwest. And
mm.
we've always had fun times doing that. Um,
You know what I'm chasing? The
hmm?
thing that I'm chasing is the following. So in 2019, I was fortunate to get a job working in Trinidad, helping, I'll just say, helping the local government make revenue because they make money off of LNG, which sparked and it ignited my interest in LNG to this day. Um, I was homeless. I was 28 or 29.
Man, you weren't
Moved,
homeless. You
I was
were
homeless. Well,
between homes.
I was
Between
between
homes.
homes, right?
You
I
weren't
didn't own
living
my
on
own
the
home.
streets.
You're
Yeah, you
right.
weren't living on the streets, man.
Thank you for clarifying because that is very important. I was not homeless,
Yeah.
but I was an expat, we'll say. The
Yeah.
company was paying for everything. I didn't have a home here in the United States. I gave up, my car. I literally showed up into Trinidad with, 5 or 6 boxes with all my stuff. I got rid of all my furniture because it's all bachelor furniture anyway. Like old
Mhm.
mattress at this point is like 7, 8 years old. Great mattress, by the way. That mattress was great. It's my first king size bed. I was like, this is fucking awesome. So I mean, got that thing, sold it, or not even sold it, just gave it to somebody. Couch, got rid of that. It was literally just me and these 5 boxes showing up in Trinidad. And like within a week or maybe 2 after I got settled in, I went to Grenada
Mhm.
and the Spice Island and rented a car. And I remember just being like, all right, for the next 12 months to potentially the rest of my life, I literally have no idea where I'm going.
Mhm.
But I know for a fact that I have food, I have shelter, I'm on a vacation. Life is like great right now. Like, and so I was just driving around. A new Post Malone album had just dropped. It was Hollywood's Bleeding, if anybody's following along. And I'm just driving around this island, no care in the world, like literally everything just like at the moment, that particular moment, solved. I didn't need to worry about where I was going next. I knew I had a job for the next 12 months. I had a house that I, could go back to, and I didn't have anything tying me down. And like that feeling of just being able to do that without any worry in the world, knew I was getting, excess per diem payments, everything like that to make sure, I was okay because I was, living for the company at that point. Man, it was just like a completely unexplainable experience and feeling that I chase to this day. And I always think like, I'm like, what is the epitome of where I think like success is? And I go back to that moment and I'm like, if I could feel that in terms of feeling secure, feeling like my future is figured out, feeling like I didn't necessarily have to worry about money anymore because I knew where my next check was coming from, etc. That truly is what I epitomize as like, I want to get back to that point. So if I could figure out the modern day version of that, that is where I'm trying to get back.
I think for me, I guess I wouldn't say the happiest because that's not the right word, especially if my wife heard me say that. I'd be pissed. But I guess the time that I would say that I had the best time was after I had gotten back from the army and I had just bought my condo in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg. I still had a really, I would call it a shitty car. It was a nice, I mean, this is what it looked like. I was just looking it up. I had a winter green Honda Civic, 1997. Oh, yeah. This thing right here. Oh, bro, this was it. And let me tell you, I used to, and the thing is, like, I was in New York City. The one thing you don't want is like a nice car in New York City. Like crappy beater car is what you want, right? So I had just bought my condo, amazing condo. And let me tell you, I was on the dating scene at the time. Bro, the car was crappy, but my condo was legit. So I remember I used to go to work and my girlfriend at the time, she would literally wait for me in the lobby of my hospital every Friday. And then we would go and she'd have a place in Hoboken and we'd go out to dinner. And, like that was like some really fun times. Like, and then we'd go hang out with like our friends. And it was like moments like that I guess like, these days, I'm not sure people have that anymore, like, I wonder if they do, but it was for those, I guess like 5 years, things were pretty fun. Things were just like, I didn't have a care in the world about any other things other than just working and hanging out and having fun. And, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's good times, man.
Yeah, the boss lady is right behind you.
It's fine.
But interesting. Yeah.
Every girl in high school had that car. I'm
true. Sure it's very true. I've ridden in that car many a times. Yeah, it was the car, man. It was that car. My buddy had that car too.
I gotta say, I was talking to my wife today. It's like, man, I was I was fit during that time. And the thing is, like, how like good looking girls would approach you, but you wouldn't notice it. I had that moment. That was the point in my life where like a girl's like, there's this one PA, they used to bring me like food. Right. And I just thought she was being nice. I didn't know she liked me. Like it didn't even register in my brain until like way later in life. And I was like, wait a second. No one just randomly brings people food. Like, huh? Especially a girl. So then I was like, oh, wait a second. So, I mean, that was like the years that I felt like I was the most attractive outwardly. I mean, I've let myself go a little bit. I mean, that's what happens. You get married and, you get a little comfortable. And I think we're going to get to that point where we get back into that shape again. Bragging, you peaked early. Bro, everyone peaks. All right. I peaked in my 20s. I peaked in my 20s. What do you want from me? You know?
Yeah, I peaked early for sure. I peaked in high school, man, for sure.
Yeah. Maybe I'll peak again. I don't know. Maybe I'll be like a peak. Like a
maybe I'll have a second peak.
From the ashes.
Yeah.
Rise from the ashes.
Yeah. Hey, man. Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate it, man. thanks for prompting it. Otherwise, I probably just would have been lazy and gone to bed early or something. But
Yeah. Let's bring on Steve next time. Let him tell us his war stories. You know,
I don't know if that's allowable on YouTube.
Big buff Steve with his
He's
pictures looking like
given me some
Thor.
previews. He's given me some previews, but I still don't think he's fully unleashed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Although
if you guys knew Steve like me and Matt know Steve, bro, it's like he is the typical Italian, like F this, F that. I don't give a F about this.
Hot Steve, man.
Can you please tell me about why F isn't F? And I'm like, Steve, bro, like I have a potty mouth, but you horrible, man. You know.
Hot Steve, man. He's
Chris,
funny. Unfortunately, I missed his call yesterday. I was in a meeting. I need to call him back.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's see. RIP monetization. I said F. I didn't say the real words. No monetization hits for me. Cool. All right,
everybody. Thank you. 200, obviously, over 220 of you guys staying on for the majority of the stream. So I appreciate you guys as always. Trying to get back after this.
Do you have 5 minutes to cover one thing really quickly?
Yeah. I got plenty of time.
Okay. So there's a company going IPO. It's called Circle. Okay. What Circle does is it's the provider of liquidity for USDC. So they issue a stable coin called USDC. Now you ask yourself, how do they issue this stable coin? Well, the way that they do it is very simple, like this real quick. Let me just show my screen. And this is something that's being legislated right now in Congress, where they are going to allow companies to issue stable coins in the United States as long as they're backed by US treasuries. Okay. And one of the reasons why I'm also bullish on TLT is this right here. So imagine right now you want to buy Bitcoin, right? So Coinbase, you would go to Coinbase and you just buy Bitcoin. But the thing is, in the background, you're converting US dollars to Bitcoin. How is that actually happening? Well, the way that it's happening is you take your dollars, it converts to USDC, which is, the stable coin. And then that stable coin buys the Bitcoin. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because the stable coin, it's backed by dollars, but it's not dollars in a sense where it's just, physical currency. What they do is they buy short-term treasuries like bills, and they collect interest from that. So if you look at the stablecoin legislation, once it passes, institutional retail, they go out there, they basically as they issue these coins, they use that cash that you give them, those dollars, and they end up buying treasuries. And right now, you're actually getting a pretty decent yield on those treasury bonds. Now, Circle is a company that does this. They're being what is that thing called? They're being IPO'd right now, and the valuation on them is $6.7 billion in valuation. Now I have to do the math in this, but there is a opportunity that could happen because essentially all they're really doing is just taking money and putting it from US dollars into treasuries, issuing a coin, and now they're making money on the interest that they're getting, right? The only thing is we have to do the math on it to see like what happens if the Fed cuts interest rates, because that means that their profit margins go down. So I have to read through their S1 to figure out like, okay, what is this actually worth? Because right now USDC market cap is roughly, let's see, right here, $61 billion. Okay. Now, what does this mean? The circulating supply is $61 billion. Each one of these things is backed by a dollar, which means there's 61 billion in US Treasury short term. So if you think about a short term Treasury yielding per year on $61 billion times 0.0, let's say 0.0425, you're looking at 2.5 billion.
Yeah.
Minus all the cost to operate this thing, because it is an operating company. So I have to look at it. I haven't done full research yet, but this could be something to just take a look at. And the question then is, what do they do with that additional cash flow? Are they going to buy back shares with it? Because that could theoretically generate shareholder value long term. I mean, it's an ideal business model where you're basically just being the guy in the middle. But like I said, it's something that we really have to dig deep into and look at that S1. And I wonder if the S1 came out with already.
I anticipate. I haven't seen anything from Fidelity though. Normally I see things from Fidelity.
Is this right? Circle, Prosperity Exchange of Value, fully back. Yes, so here it is. Here's the S1. Maybe I'll take some time and
I can put it in
global liquidity.
Notebook.lm and see.
I just want to see their financials. Blah, 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 blah. They're going to have all the risk stuff, financials. Come on, man. What's the financials on this thing? These damn S1s. Oh. This is S1, S1, S1. It's the same S1. See, this is the thing. There's 60 billion in circulation. Founders letter, dividend, capitalization, dilution, use of proceeds. What are the use of proceeds? We estimate the net proceeds will be 213 million approximately if the underwriters exercise their blah, 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 blah. Each 1,000 sharing. Okay, there it is. Cash and cash equivalents. Total capitalization. Existing shareholders.
You're not sharing that screen, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Here it is. So, just a circulation. So, this is the reserve rate of return that they're getting. Man, I really gotta do more research on this thing. So they've got 60 billion in circulation. 3 months ended here. USDC on the platform, daily weighted average percentage on platform. Net income.
I guess I'm a little bit confused. So is it just so that they can transfer in and out of like something that is backed by the dollar and they don't have to, like, I guess I'm trying to understand, like, if you're selling Bitcoin, you're selling it for USDC instead of USD, if that makes sense. Like to make sure that it's tokenized, if that makes sense, and on the blockchain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, this is a little bit. I have to do more research on it. Like it's definitely something that's interesting, but the net income amount. So 3 months ended. So that's what, like 240 million in net income. So these are all the expenses that they have. So let's.
You're not far off. 2 billion in because the reserve income, it was 557 for the quarter. So you're not wrong.
No. So it's 557 for the quarter, which means annualized is about 2 billion, right? So with 2 billion in income, distribution and transaction costs. Damn. What the hell? Why are their transaction costs so high?
I don't know.
Compensation expense. I mean, where's this going to? Maybe it's going to Coinbase. I don't know.
Notebook LM, and I'm curious. I'm sure it would.
Yeah. Compensation expenses for employees.
Oh, it probably breaks it down below. Because it has reserve income right below.
So let's do that. Total transaction and other costs. Okay, distribution and transaction increased. No. Let's see. It just says increase. It doesn't say what does it go to. Okay, deposits from stable coins. When such payments in the form of corporate held stable coins are for distribution, transaction costs, or other operating expenses incurred, the payments are presented in unordered. I wonder if we could get someone who's more of a crypto guy, because I'm not a crypto guy, so I don't know how
I just buy
that
Bitcoin.
works.
I don't know shit. I just buy Bitcoin.
I mean, look at this. They did 1.6 billion in revenue, but then like the distribution costs are $1 billion. Compensation is about $250 million. You would think that they'd have better margins, no? Like, what are they spending? Like, what is this? Like, how does that work? Does anyone in the chat know why they have such a huge expenses for transactions? Because that's unsustainable. If they have to keep up with that transaction cost, eventually those treasury bonds are not going to yield 4%. They're only going to yield 2%. So then what are you going to do about this nonsense? Huh. Right? Doesn't make sense then. The operating expenses have flatlined, though. That's at least good, but it's just distribution costs. Like, huh. Maybe someone let's reach out to some people if we know people who might be involved in this and see.
I think Dougie's got it solved. If a coin of any kind is run by a company, it's a scam. So
yeah,
I think we've gotten to the bottom of this.
So pretty sure Coinbase is a huge partner. Yeah, Coinbase is a huge partner. I went to Webull and it looks like I can put in a pre-order for Circle. For TXS transactions, they pay Ethereum fees on the blockchain. Is that what it is?
I think so. That's what I'm anticipating, is that like if you trade Bitcoin to Bitcoin, you have to pay some sort of gas fee in order for it to go. And so it's just like how if you were to buy something with a Visa card, you're going to pay 2%. Normally people don't think about that because the merchant eats it, right? But if you are eliminating the middleman, which is kind of what Bitcoin is for, and in this case they're playing the middleman, that they're getting some sort of margin, which, like you said, is that revenue, but they still have to pay for the gas fees or transaction fees.
Okay, so let's do ChatGPT and see what we get. Continue. Okay, let's see. Let's see what else Chris has been looking at on the left. You can. I did a professional headshot, 10-year projection, stablecoin legislation, So I don't use anything like stupid for this. Let's see. So let's review the current S1 for Circle. And I'll use 4.5.
How do you like GPT versus Grok?
It's okay. I like GPT for a couple of reasons. I mean, let me just make it bigger so everyone can see right here. Circle lending issuer stable coins in USDC, which are fully backed by reserves. As of this one, USDC had 43 billion. See, this is old stuff. This is not even right. See that? This is the problem with you using these damn LLMs. Like, this is actual real-time information and they can't get it. I mean, I could run deep search or search the web and try again. The information you presented was old. So now it's going to search the web. The most recent S1 is blah, 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 business overview. Circle minted more than $1 billion redeemed over this. So how much do they have outstanding? How much USDC is outstanding currently?
I think that's part of the cost piece. That's like people are saying, what happens when they sell the coin? The coin, I think, dissolves, right? I mean, I think that's part of the, I don't know. I'm not a genius at this, but my thought process is like, it's literally used to be able to transfer from Bitcoin back to a currency and tokenize, in my opinion, on the blockchain what happened with that Bitcoin, because that Bitcoin can't disappear, right? So it has to be kind of held stable through some sort of, thing. And so I don't know. My vision is it's like, and that's what it's seen is like it created 500 some billion Bitcoin, or sorry, stable coins, but it, basically redeemed 450 billion.
So there it is right there. Revenue sharing with distribution partners. Circle has agreement with partners like Coinbase where a significant portion of interest income generated from USDC reserves is shared. Reports indicate that over 60% of interest income is paid to such partners. There you go. See, there had to be something there. To promote the adoption and circulation of USD, Circle offers incentives to its partners. These incentives are designed to encourage partners to integrate and promote USDC within their platforms, leading to increased distribution costs. Circle does not earn significant revenue from secondary market. Instead, it relies heavily on interest income from reserves, a portion of which is shared with distribution partners. Okay, there you go. So that's the answer. So basically,
so just sharing. I thought it would have been from transaction fees.
Yeah, but see, this is one good thing, because if it's only a portion of the fees, that means that if, let's say, interest rates go down, like let's say they go down to 2%, that also means their transaction costs go down, right? Because they're sharing those fees. They're not like it's a fixed amount. Like, no, you got to pay $1 billion, regardless. So the chances of it going bankrupt are not really high, because essentially Coinbase is going to utilize them, but they're going to get a percentage from the interest income from that thing. All right, it'll be interesting to see, man. I bet they will partner with Hood eventually. I'd be surprised if Hood doesn't create its own stable coin, if it doesn't already. Does Hood have his own stable coin?
No.
Does Robinhood have its own stable coin? Crypto firms including Robinhood and Kraken launch stable coin network. See? So everyone's getting into it. There you go. This could be a nice big revenue driver for
when are we creating our stable coin?
For Hood. We're not popular enough to do it.
Chris coin.
Let's see. Nah. Robinhood.
Nah, dude. What do you mean? You slap the name Patel on something? People will be all about that.
It's too generic, all the brown people. You don't want people. You don't want that, dude. In particular, using stablecoin to power of a lot of our weekend settlements, we're using it increasingly.
Patel coin.
Okay. But see, this is the thing with all these stable coins, dude. The more stable coins keep getting issued, the more likely it is that more and more demand is going to come out there for treasuries, and the treasuries are going to move from a ton of people buying bills to a ton of people buying notes to a ton of people buying bonds, because it's going to be like a wave that goes that way. BBL coin for Chris.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, but
y'all are a bunch of instigators trying to get me in trouble, man. The hell is wrong with y'all?
I'm trying to scratch my head. So
what?
Scroll up in the comments.
You commented something?
Yeah, it was fun.
Honey, I told you I'm trying to keep you a secret. Okay, no one's supposed to know who you are.
Scroll up more.
All right, let's see. Big booty. What did you say? I'm not. Honey, this is dumb. All right.
ChatGPT about big booty Latinas.
You ask ChatGPT about big booty Latinas, please. Asking for a friend. Why? That's stupid. Get out of here.
I'm with her actually on that. Can we
please? Why would ChatGPT know about that? Let's see. I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT. Right? I really want to see. I want to see what ChatGPT said.
It's gonna be the Cool J.
Yes, actually, June asked first.
So Latinas. What are big booty Latinas? Let's see.
June did say that first. Yeah.
The phrase "big booty" colloquially with often sexualized terms in popular culture.
Oh God.
Curvature of the butt. Man, this is like the most professional response ever. Critical perspectives reflects broader societal issues related to sexualization, objectification of Latina women. Scholars have critiqued such terms.
Ask it to create an image.
Wait, no. Why are we doing this on mine? Screw this. I don't want the. the future AI looking at like, oh, there's that degenerate right there. You know,
thing
when we get to artificial general intelligence, and I got to report to the AI, they're gonna be like, remember that time?
Yeah, remember
Asking
that
about
time
this?
you needed that created image? But the funny thing with Grok, so Grok, like I never renew the instance. So like you see how yours on ChatGPT has like the different things that you've looked. Like my Grok
Right.
will just like, Matt, remember when you asked about like going to Vegas like 3 months ago? Well, that really pertains to how you're talking about LNG here. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like new topic. Like, why are you combining things that don't need to be combined? Like
What does
was it? It was-
LNG have to do with big booty Latinas?
yeah, exactly. It's just like, Matt, remember I forget what it was the other day. It was like it was trying to compare some professional topic versus like I was like asking it best barbecue in Houston or something like that. And it was like it's about comparable to how this company is doing their revenue stream is like how Truth Barbecue in Houston, creates their pulled pork. And you're like, it just didn't make any sense.
Do big booty Latinas have to do with U.S. liquefied
Oh God.
natural gas? Let's see. Has no direct or relevant connections to U.S. natural gas.
See, tell
Good.
that to Grok. Grok won't.
Okay, let's see. Grok. Grok's a degenerate, so let's see. I have to sign into
Grok does
Twitter.
whatever it wants.
Grok. Tell me about big booty Latinas and US LNG. Okay. Are you sure I should press enter on this? Screw it. Why not?
That's the worst that happens.
Big booty Latinas is a colloquial. I mean, it's the same thing. Media representation, societal commentary, critical perspectives. The framing can be obscured. I mean, this is not bad. I don't know why y'all are thinking that there's some kind of connecting.
Yeah, it's just connecting, and you're like, what the fuck?
There's no direct link.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, the hell. All y'all are messed up. All right, leave the big booty Latinas alone. What's wrong with y'all?
Hey man, they need loving
All
too.
right. They do need love. Fine. I'm out.
All right.
Thanks. I'll be on
Thanks,
the couch.
everybody.
Thanks a lot, chat.
Oh God.
I thought one.
What were you gonna say?
I said one day I just want to sleep in my own bed. Y'all are making me sleep on the couch again. Messed up. All of y'all. All right, play the outro. Let's get out.
Greed is good.
The stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in fucking circles. It's all a fugazi.
Sell it all.
Greed is good. Huge upside potential, upwards of $60,000.